listen up.
No, I wasn't listening.
We are going to start working backwards. So instead of getting an equation and taking it apart to find H, K, P, A, B, C, whatever type of shape we're looking for, we're going to, and using that stuff to graph, we're going to get information about a graph, and then we're going to write the equation. So we're working backwards from what we learned last week. Okay. So we're going to start with parabolas today because those are kind of different than ellipses and hyperbolas. But you'll see on your gold sheet and on the board over here, tomorrow we're going to do ellipses and hyperbolas together because they both have a squared and b squared in them. Good thing you are leaning too forward, Brian. Could have lost an eye. Okay. So we're going to be using these two equations. What's the difference between the x minus h squared and the y minus k squared equation in a parabola? The way that it opens, right? So you might want to make note in yours about these are parabolas that open up and down, and these are parabolas that open left and right. What are the things that we want to know as actual like set values so that we can write equations? We're going to want to know h and k, which h and k is what in the parabola? The vertex. So we're going to need hk. We're going to need to know where our vertex is. And what else will we need? P. Can anybody describe what P is? The distance from the vertex to the focus. And I'm going to say directed distance. Directed distance from vertex to focus. When I put that qualifier of directed distance there, it means the sign of P matters. So if I'm working with the x minus h squared equation, I know that my parabola opens up or down. It opens up if the value of P is positive, and it opens down when P is negative. So you can also use that information about what you know about a parabola and what direction it opens to make sure that you have the right value for P. And then if your parabola for y minus k opens left, what do you know about P? It's a negative P value, and this would be a positive P value, okay, to open to the right. So it's the directed distance from the vertex to the focus. If you were to have the distance from the vertex to the directrix, that would be the opposite of P, because remember we like count up to our focus and then we count down to our directrix. So that's the opposite value. Okay, and then when you write equations for me, x and y should be variables in the equation so that it represents the actual conic section, and we could fill in different values for x and y to get points around that shape. So let's do an example together, and then I've got a few more examples for you to try. We're going to write the equation of a parabola with a vertex at the origin and a directrix at x equals 4. You know, I said earlier that we're basically working backwards from what we had done last week. So to me, I prefer a visual. In conic sections, I'm always thinking about the different shapes and what they look like on the coordinate plane. So I'm going to go ahead and plot the things I know. So I'm going to draw myself a coordinate plane. At the origin, that's my vertex. And x equals 4 is what kind of line? All lines are straight, technically. It's a vertical line. That's my, little quick back. So this I'm only graphing the things that they're telling me, but by seeing that vertex and that vertical directrix to the right, I now know instantly what direction my parabola must open. What's the only direction this parabola can open? To the left. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to draw that in blue because I'm not told that, but I know that it opens to the left. So then that helps me if I'm trying to write the equation. I now know which equation to use. Y minus k squared. So I'm going to write that down. Y minus k squared equals 4p times x minus h. And then like you guys told me on the last slide, I'm going to need h and k, which I have. 0, 0, right? The origin is where the vertex is, so then I know h and k is equal to 0, 0. And I also need p. Can anybody tell me what the value of p is going to be? It's going to be negative. Why, Emma? Because it opens to the left. And the value of that is negative 4. Where are we getting the 4 from? If we counted 4 to the directrix, then we would have counted 4 to the focus, because the vertex point has to also be equidistant from the vertex and the directrix like any other point. So I have everything I need. I can say y squared equals 4 times negative 4 times x, which is just y squared equals negative 16x. Okay, and I wrote the equation. Now, I will say beware. I get a lot of people on quizzes and tests who square all of the variables in the parabola. But remember, the parabola is an equation that's different than ellipses and hyperbolas because only one of the variables is squared. So make sure you kind of remember that you don't want to square both of those. Any questions about that? Okay, you guys try this with your pod. See if you can come up with an equation for my parabola with these characteristics. We've got a vertex at 2, negative 1 and a focus at 2, 1. When I give you these problems, you'll always have enough information to figure out the equation. Sometimes you have to be a little bit more creative or thoughtful about how you'll be able to find that. But just by plotting vertex and focus, that helps you decide which equation you want to use. What do we know about this parabola? It opens up, right? I get a lot of people, like I always label vertex and focus so that I remember which one is actually on the parabola. Remember how I used to, when I described the focus, I said it's like someone doing a stupid human trick, and then we all crowd around to see the stupid human trick. So that's the focus of attention. But that then means that this opens up. That's just like my silly way of remembering it, because I get a lot of people who will draw a parabola that opens down because they're not paying attention to the difference between the focus and the vertex. Okay, so now we know it's an x minus h squared equation, and hk is pretty obvious for us, right? That's to negative 1, what'd you guys say for P? It would be just positive 2. It's positive because it's opening up, but also because if I'm at the vertex, which is my HK, I would have counted up 2. So that's the directed distance, right? A positive 2, okay, to get to the focus. So P equals 2, and I could write, what, x minus 2 quantity squared equals 8 times y plus 1. And I have an equation. Be careful not to square this guy. Okay, only square both in ellipses and hyperbolas. Right? Any questions about that? Okay, now the next one, I want you to maybe discuss and talk with your pods as you're getting started. But it works a little bit differently because I'm not going to give you any specific information about a focus or a directrix. So it's like, how do I expect you to write the equation if I don't know anything about focus and directrix? And so talk with your pods about what you might do in my next example. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see it better. If I give you a picture of a graph and label some information on this graph, how will you get me the equation of that parabola? So discuss. You don't actually know that that's where the focus is. That's not necessarily like me counting up. That's just a point on the parabola. You don't know where the focus is. So we don't know that it's on the line. But P is not 2. You have no idea where the focus is. You have no idea where the directrix is. At this point, really the only thing, like real clear and obvious is that this parabola opens to the left, right? So this is a y minus k.
Alright.
So be thoughtful and pick out your appropriate equation. What's the only kind of information I'm providing for you?
Vertex.
Vertex. So I'm giving you an h and a k. What else am I giving you?
A point.
A point, which is an x and a y.
So you just plug that in.
So I can just plug it in. And what's the only thing that I won't know? P. So I'll be able to solve for P. We can't, I don't know that this is that point that is 2P away. I'm just giving you a point on the parabola. So we can't say that the focus is right in the middle there. I don't actually know. So we're just plugging those values. 0 plus 1 quantity squared equals 4P times 2 minus 4. We'll work out your parentheses. That's going to be 1 squared equals 4P times negative 2. And this is all getting multiplied, right? So 1 equals negative 8P. Therefore, P equals negative 1/8. Is that okay that P is a fraction? Yeah, it's totally fine that P is a fraction. And the smaller the P values, this is something you can look at with your wax paper parabolas at your pods before we hang them up. The smaller the P value, like the smaller the distance from the vertex to the focus, the narrower the parabola. Those people who put their focus further away, you've got a really wide parabola, and some of the people at your group have a really narrow parabola because they put closer. So that makes sense because this is a pretty narrow parabola. And then I just have to plug those values in. So what's that going to be? Y plus 1 quantity squared equals, it'll be 4 times negative 1/8, so negative 1/2. And then x minus 4. it's really not too terrible. It's just deciding, like, don't make stuff up that you don't know. Like, you don't know where the focus is. I'm not telling you that that's the extra point that's 2p away from the focus, so don't assume that. Okay, that's only an x and a y. Okay, one more for you to try on your own. I'm going to pass back your graphing quizzes while you guys are working on this. Then I'll put the answer on the board. So go ahead and see if you can do this one on your own.
Because if we do, this right here.
I don't see any like that up there.
Now it's gotta be a ugly duck. Have you read that? Did you have to read that book when you were a child? The ugly duck. This is all these yellow ducks, and then there's this one gray duck. And they were all like, "Wow, you're ugly." And then the ugly duckling grew up into a swan, and they were like super jealous. And then the swan was like, "Get out." Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
That's not a cool story. Animal
This one I got by now.
Animal protein. It's not animal protein. I mean, it was.
Ours
So
like
you
was
got
struggling.
that.
Thanks. Okay, so this Oh, wait.
Okay, just by graphing the vertex and the directrix here, what do you know instantly about your parabola? Opens down. So we know which equation to use. X minus h quantity squared equals 4p times y minus k. We've got our vertex at, this is our vertex at 0, 3, so that's going to be my h and k. We know because it's opening down, what has to be true about the value of p? It's got to be negative. And then what is the number? -4. Okay. We're counting back 4 to the, or up 4 to the directrix, so we would have counted down 4 to the focus point. And so p is -4 again. We come up with, well, I could really write x squared over here. X squared equals -16 times y minus 3. Okay. You've got to be thoughtful when writing the equations. Think about the pieces, how they go together. That's an x squared parabola with a negative in front, so the graph is opening down. That corresponds with what information you've been given. I think it's really great to start with a visual. Those of us who, got some good practice last week with graphing conics, we did our homework, we checked our homework problems online, we felt confident about all that stuff. Writing equations is going to be a little bit easier for those people. Those people who didn't stay caught up with homework, who came unprepared for graphing quizzes, we're going to struggle just a little bit more in writing equations because we don't know that stuff as well. So that's the benefit of, staying on top of stuff and doing your homework each day. It makes it a little bit easier. Your homework tonight is on your gold sheet. It's writing equations of parabolas. Your quiz corrections are due tomorrow at the beginning of class, and you're going to use the yellow quiz correction sheet up at the front. There were only 3 problems, so all of your work should be on the front of that yellow sheet in boxes 1, 2, and 3. Here's what I'll say. I'm just going to look at your yellow sheet and grade it like you just redid the whole problem. Even if you only missed one part, just redo the whole thing. I mean, if you got everything else right, then it's a matter of copying it, right? So I don't really feel too bad about that. But you should have like a full problem in each of those boxes if you want to earn your points back. Okay. If there's a circle at the top of your graph, that means like something's not right with the graph. That could be its orientation, like it's vertical, or horizontal major axis. One small thing that some people miss, they didn't graph the directrix or they didn't graph the focus points. So make sure that you have the important parts of the conic on the graph. But if you have any questions about like what you did wrong or anything like that, you're welcome to see me before class ends, after school today, before school tomorrow. But I expect those things to be completed if you want points back at the beginning of class tomorrow. If you just got it today, do it like homework. Any questions about that? Oh, yeah. I don't know why I didn't write you down.
It's probably because I was angry.